And tonight on the Daily Wrap, the Kentucky clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples was released from jail earlier in rock star fashion with GOP presidential candidate Mike Huckabee by her side. And after the Pope made it easier for couples to get a divorce, many are wondering if he's becoming too liberal. And we have the latest on the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and it ain't pretty. This is the Daily Wrap live from New York City. And hello there, I'm Joe Concha, sleep deprived, along with my co-host Rick Unger. How are you?
Well, much better than you. I had lots of sleep over the past couple of days. You, on the other hand, I suspect had none.
No, barely any. I read on the Twitter you actually got 12 hours of sleep one night.
I did one night. It was fantastic, and yet, wouldn't you know it, all the news held off until today. Wasn't that nice?
It did, and then perfectly for this show, because we're talking Kim Davis.
Right. Quite a day.
And you have a couple things to say about that.
Yeah, it's not over yet.
Okay, very good. And to his right, she's a Philly attorney and America's pundit. Heather Hansen is back and well tanned, I might add.
Yes,
and finally, to her right, he's the editor of the WisdomDaily.com, and you're not. Brad Hirschfield.
He's well tanned
once
also.
Again.
I am.
You are, aren't you?
What's with all you these tans?
Vacation. It's good.
Yeah, well, we had 4 days off, so that helped. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download, shall we?
Would you please help me welcome to the stage Kim Davis?
Okay, that was the scene today in Kentucky as Rowan County Clerk Kim Davis was released from jail after serving 5 days for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. She did so on religious grounds.
The injunction is the order that you're supposed to issue marriage licenses.
And we're not issuing marriage
The
licenses
Supreme
today.
Court denied your stay.
We are not issuing marriage licenses today. So
Based on what?
I would ask you all to
Why are you not
go
issuing
ahead
marriage
and
licenses today?
Because I'm not.
Under
Why?
whose authority are you not issuing
Under
licenses?
God's authority.
I don't
Did
believe
God
in your
tell you
God.
to do this? Did God
I
tell
don't
you to
believe in
treat
your God.
us?
I don't
like
believe in your
this?
I've
God.
asked you all to leave. You are interrupting my
You can call the
business.
police if you want us to leave.
And presidential hopeful, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee was also on hand to come to Davis's defense, while maybe doing just a little bit of politicking as well.
It is far more than one clerk saying she will not issue marriage licenses. It's that every one of us will have to decide whether or not we want to keep this great republic or whether we're willing to sacrifice it and surrender it to tyranny. And I think we gather here today to say we will not surrender to the tyranny of one branch of government.
And if you like that, here's a bit more from Governor Huckabee.
Let Kim go. But if you have to put someone in jail, I volunteer to go. Let me go. Lock me up if you think that's how freedom is best served. Because, folks, I am willing to spend the next 8 years in the White House leading this country, but I want you to know I'm willing to spend the next 8 years in jail, but I'm not willing to spend one day under the tyranny of people who believe they can take our freedom and conscience away.
Well, he should have the time. I don't think he'll be in the White House. The terms of Davis's release requires that she do nothing to stop her assistant clerks who have agreed to issue marriage licenses to anybody who chooses to apply. Should she interfere, she would presumably be required to return to jail. Now, were Ms. Davis's religious rights abused in this case, or was she wrong to refuse to follow the Supreme Court's ruling that same-sex marriages are legal under the U.S. Constitution? Joe Concha, that's a question made for you.
Made for me?
Yeah, I don't know
I thought it was
why.
more made for Hansen, if anything
Well,
else.
we're going to get to Hansen
She's
in
the
a
lawyer.
moment. No, we're getting to Hansen in just a moment.
Okay.
I have a special question.
Oh, I'm
for her.
sure you do. Look,
Oh, look at me.
I'm not Star Jones. I'm not a lawyer. All right. However, I know the human side to this is what's compelling people and what's
Well,
drawing
were her
them to
religious
this.
rights abused?
Yes, I believe so, only because the Supreme Court ruled 25 years after she became a county clerk. So to suddenly tell her that she shouldn't follow what she believes is the law that she ultimately stands under, which is the law of God.
Let me draw a comparison. So a slave owner who had their slaves for 25 years before slavery was outlawed by the court should have absolutely been permitted to keep their slaves.
That's 1865. You're
don't
using a
care.
hypothetical from 150 years
I'm
ago.
using another Supreme Court case.
It's not.
I understand.
That's not a
Take him
religious-
off the hook.
Talking about the human element of
But
it.
it's
Take
not
him
a
off the
religious
hook.
objection. That wasn't a religious objection.
Well,
Here,
so it's different. You only listen to the Supreme Court when it's a religious objection, but we don't listen, or don't listen
the
to it.
Supreme Court has said that when you become a public official, you don't lose your constitutional rights. You have a First Amendment right to exercise your religion. There are ways that her rights could have been accommodated and yet not infringed in even the teeniest way on anyone's 14th Amendment rights. Every one of these same-sex couples could have come in,
Well,
just as
apparently
they
there's
did
not
here.
a way. I
Well,
mean, that's
there's
actually what
many ways.
wait, what she's asking for now is a way where they change the law in Kentucky so that an assistant clerk or somebody else can sign it. At this moment, in fact, there is no way because her title, her clerk, has to be on a marriage certificate.
The Kentucky governor could enter an executive order
yes.
tomorrow
Yes.
to allow this so that they could
Well,
accommodate
actually,
her
that's
for
not clear that he could. I mean, the
I-
legislature certainly could.
Right, but he could enter an executive order, much like our president has done, to make this be, because they don't come back into
You think it's legal
session
for him to
until
do that?
yes,
You do.
absolutely. And I think that then that way her rights have been accommodated. We've seen the same thing in North Carolina. In North Carolina, the law is written so that people who have an objection step aside, someone else steps right in. There's no delay.
So, Brad,
everyone gets what they need.
Brad, so let's say that the governor of Kentucky follows Heather's lead and signs that executive order tomorrow, changing the law to work for Kim Davis. Should we now expect county officials all over America to be looking for anything that might offend their religious beliefs and asking their governor to change the laws?
I think they probably already are, but the real decision
Really?
here is,
Why? Based on
because
what do you think
when
that
people
for?
talk about a war against Christianity, that
Well, no,
feeling
no,
is
no,
out
no.
there. So, wait, Rick, you asked
No.
a question, let me answer for you.
No.
Let's
You said
not
you think there
flog
are. You
this
need to
here.
be
I
specific.
just did.
No, you didn't.
Let's not flog this on air the way Mike Huckabee did from that stage. The truth is the governor decided to flog it and play the Christian tyranny card, and now we're assuming that any accommodation to people of Christian faith somehow undermines constitutional
So a judge
freedom.
was told. excuse
Neither
me,
is true.
Let me get
we
in
can
here.
actually
Let me get
solve
in
this
here,
if we
please.
want
A
to.
judge was told, I believe it was in Texas, that the Ten Commandments could no longer stay in front of the courthouse building
Oklahoma.
because
That was
Oklahoma, thank
Oklahoma,
you,
yeah.
because it was a violation of separating church and state. So under your assessment, the judge should have been able to say, well, they were here before I got here, and I'm okay with them, and it offends my religious rights to do my job without them. No, we're not going to listen to that judge. They stay. Joe?
No, I guess you don't want the answer.
go
But
ahead.
no, they're not analogous situations. And in fact, the better case here is the case in Florida, where the response was, alongside the bench that honored the Ten Commandments and other religious traditions that are part of American law and American culture, was an invitation to secular groups to honor Greek philosophy, Native American thought, and the other traditions. The bottom line is this is ultimately about
That's
one
not-
question.
I'm sorry, but
Do
it's
you
not the
think
same.
you have to get rid of other people's views you don't like to secure yours? It turns out that right now, a segment of the Christian community and the secularist community would both rather banish each other to feel good,
No,
as
I
opposed to
agree with
looking
that.
for a way
I
to
agree.
widen the
But
public square. And
that's
that's what we need to do.
I agree with you and the last thing you said, but it's a different issue when we can't just skirt by the other issue.
What's the alternative, I guess, is the question.
The alternative is
She
that
resigns?
you have to follow. Well, that's always been the alternative.
She's done it for 26 years, though. She
So
earns
what?
$64,000 a
didn't-
year.
It
What
didn't
do you want her to do?
I want her to follow her conscience. That's what she says this is
She
all
is
about.
following her conscience.
No, she's not. She's not doing the job she was elected to do. Now, she has the opportunity to say, my conscience will no longer, after 25 years, 26 years, won't allow me to do the job. I understand.
But
then
the job
go
isn't
do
laid out
another
the same
job.
way it was
If
25
you
years
can
ago when she first took
accommodate
it.
her- Rick, if you can
Rick,
accommodate
here's an easy
her-
accommodation.
If
Let
you
her
can-
finish this
All
term
right,
potentially and
I
not
gotta
stand
go.
for
We'll
re-election.
continue with it. We're going
That,
to
I think,
continue
makes some
this into
sense.
the next segment. Are you more likely to vote for Mike Huckabee after today's rally? Let us know who you pick for the 2016 GOP nomination by going to newsmaxpolls.com. Coming up, we're going to continue with this, and maybe Donald Trump is getting a dose of his own medicine. Stay tuned.
Let me ask you about that Kentucky court clerk. You were asked about it at your appearance yesterday and said you hadn't had time to look into it. So now, what do you think?
Well, look, the decision came down from the Supreme Court, Gene, so I'm a believer on both sides of the picture. I would say the simple answer is let her clerks do it. Now, from what I understand, she's not letting her clerks do it either.
But Donald, bottom line is, though, the Supreme Court makes a decision. That's the law of the land, right?
You have to go with it. I mean, you have to go with it. The decision's been made, and that is the law of the land.
It should be noted that is Donald Trump's 3,000th interview since announcing his run for president. Good job. Power of doing it by phone. Anyway, welcome back to the Daily Wrap. That was Mr. Trump on Morning Joe being asked the question he didn't want to answer when our own Rick Unger asked him last week during a press conference. You duck Unger, you pay the price. Evangelist Franklin Graham condemned Donald Trump, and the Supreme Court is flat out wrong about gay marriage, writing on the Facebook, and we quote, just because something is made into a law doesn't make it right. And this is what we're going to continue to hear. Heather Hansen, it may be the law of the land, don't make it right.
But there's a different issue between whether or not it is the law of the land and therefore it is right for America, period, end of story. But that does not mean that someone's religious feelings should not be accommodated if they can be. In this situation, it's, you know, we talked about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in Indiana and all the problems that we had about this particular issue, whereas in Utah, the LGBT community sat down with the Mormons and came up with compromises that were going to guide their decisions going forward.
Great way
the
to do
same
it.
thing could have happened here.
But it didn't.
But it could have, Rick, and both sides need to sit down and do
Because
this.
it's politically charged? Why didn't it happen?
Well, because she never gave them an opportunity when they, wait, don't interrupt. When they came in for a marriage license, she didn't say, guys, let's sit down and try and work this out. She said, no, I'm not issuing marriage licenses today.
Because
you're going to blame them?
I blame both sides.
Oh,
they came in
please.
with cameras. By the way, the reason there won't be a solution
Not
is
in
if
the
anyone
beginning, they
imagines that there's only one side to blame, it's wrong. The irony here is that both Franklin Graham and Donald Trump got this right in a way.
Excuse me,
Donald
they did
Trump
not
got
come
it
in with
right
cameras at
because
first.
the law of the land is the law of the land. And Graham is correct that just because it's the law doesn't make it right. There is a role for civil disobedience. It also turns out, though, in our long history of civil disobedience, it's always been in the name of expanding access for people, not limiting it. And that's one thing he will have to take account of.
All right, Unger, your retort.
My retort is they did not come in with cameras at the beginning. It wasn't until she said no. There were no cameras when this first started. Then they started bringing cameras in, you know, the day before she finally got put in jail. So no, I'll tell you what, I buy your solution 100%. Sit down and work it out, but you can't put this on the gay community.
I'm not, and by any stretch of the
No one
imagination,
offered
I
them
am
that
putting it on
opportunity.
the governor, who put this rule into place without sitting down and speaking with the clerks and saying, how can we accommodate you? Are there enough of you that are willing to do this that we can then accommodate
Well,
the
that's what
people
the
who are
judge
unable?
has done.
That's
That's
what
why
the
he let
governor
her out.
should have done. The same governor who had allowed his attorney general to decide not to argue in defense of their same-sex marriage ban because it was against his conscience is now forcing other people into doing something against
Well, no,
theirs.
actually the judge did.
Because he made the law that way.
Okay. Well, the rhetoric has been charged in this case, but today on The View, it went really down into the swamp when new co-host Michelle Collins had this to say about Kim Davis.
Is her religious freedom being violated, or is she violating people's civil rights? I mean, what's happening here?
This is a woman who's been married more times than everyone at this table combined.
4 times. She's my top candidate for this got a man, by the way. I'm like 4 times. Have you seen the lady?
She will say, though, that she
I'm serious. She's a monster.
And we wonder why The View is going down the tubes in the ratings. Anyway, Brad, your thoughts on Ms. Collins' assessment that she's a monster?
It's outrageous. Forget a war against Christianity, which I don't believe. I think that's practicing a war against humanity. The idea that she is described as a bitch and a monster, however wrong she is, and I don't agree with her conclusions, is outrageous. And the really disturbing thing is, lots of nervous laughter. But you know what didn't happen on that show? No one said, whoa. That's not the way we're going to find solutions. That is exactly what you cannot do, however wrong she is. And there's plenty that's wrong about what Kim Davis has done. There's parts that are right, too. But a bitch and a monster? That's outrageous.
See, that's the problem. You're absolutely right. Look, I take this woman 100% at her word. I don't care what her history is. People
and
come
her history, by the way, was that she was married 4 times before.
But people come to their religion when they do and how they do, and I have never once questioned her honest intent in all of this. I happen to disagree with how she exercised it, but not for a second do I question her as a human being, her religious beliefs. I support her religious beliefs. I just come up with a different solution when faced with that choice.
Heather, you were on the short list to replace Rosie Perez on the news. Is this how you would have conducted yourself?
No, and listen, I think that there's everyone's taking their sides and gone to their corners instead of coming together and having a conversation, and there's an easier solution.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, a flight attendant from ExpressJet, Charlie Stanley, has been placed on 12-month unpaid leave for refusing to serve alcohol to passengers in accordance with her Muslim faith. Ms. Stanley was not a Muslim when she joined the airline 3 years ago, converting to the religion 1 year after beginning her job. Since then, she has relied on other flight attendants to serve all the alcohol until a fellow flight attendant, he said, filed a complaint resulting in the airline suspending her. Is Ms. Stanley being persecuted for her religious beliefs?
No, I think you got to be consistent here. If you think that that what Davis did was wrong, then you have to look at this the same way. Look, there is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act requires you to make accommodation if it doesn't overburden the system. Obviously, they tried in this case. They found it did overburden the system in their estimation, and they let her go.
Amazing how similar the cases were. She came to religion after the fact, after she took the job. Anyway, how far do you think employers should go to protect different religious beliefs in the workplace? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know, and be sure to get your copy of Ben Carson's book, One Nation, absolutely free. All you have to do is pay $4.95 to cover the cost of shipping. Call 1-800-485-4350. That's 1-800-485-4350. Or visit newsmax.com/Ben right now. Coming up, is the Pope becoming too liberal for conservatives? It's a religious rap tonight. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Let's check in with the demonstrative, Steve Malzberg, and see what he has planned for tonight. Steve.
Joe, of course, Kim Davis is out of jail. We'll talk about it with the Malzberg panel and with Adam Thompson. We don't agree on what's going on here. That should be interesting. Also, Joy Ann Reid of MSNBC will be here, and that should be a very interesting conversation. Roland Martin, he doesn't like the folks at Fox News. He'll tell you why. All that and Gimme 5. It's all straight ahead right after the Daily Wrap, 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it.
Did he just celebrate?
I think he scored a touchdown.
Touchdown.
He scored a touchdown.
15 yards.
6 points for Malzberg.
It was only a 4-point touchdown, though.
Yeah, 15 yards for unsportsmanlike conduct. Malzberg, it's a tease. Anyway, since being selected by to be the Holy See, Pope Francis has ruffled a few feathers with his less than conservative views on church doctrine. As a result, some of his stances on the following issues have conservative members of the church, including bishops, upset. Pope Francis believes atheists will go to heaven. We shouldn't judge homosexuals. Consumer culture and corporate greed must end. Pollution is a sin, and we must fight global warming. Abortion, considered a mortal sin in the church, can be forgiven by said church, and marriage annulments should be easier and less costly. Let's bring onto the show for the first time Rick Henshaw. He's the Director of Communications for the Catholic League. Okay, Rick, very simple question. Is the Pope too liberal for your taste?
No, I think what we have to focus on is exactly what the Pope is saying, not what is being interpreted by his listeners. And I think there's, Cardinal Burke was quoted in the Washington Post this morning as emphasizing that the Pope cannot change doctrine, and that was interpreted by the writer as a warning to the Pope. But it could very easily be seen as a kind of a calm down to both sides of this, what secular media call the liberal-conservative divide. Those who want to see changes in doctrine get all excited when the Pope talks about, he changes the tone, or he talks about reaching out pastorally to people who've been divorced, women who've had abortions. His predecessors have all done that too. He takes a different tone, but he's not talking about changing church teaching on marriage or on the sanctity of human life. And those on the other side need to stop panicking, thinking that he's going to change doctrine, when that's not where he's going. What he's doing is he's trying to reach out pastorally. Maybe there's a different tone, a different emphasis, but there's not a change in substance as to what the church teaches.
Rick, I'm always curious about how a church, any church actually, goes about the process of liberalizing and modernizing a religion. We could look back in the Bible and see things, stoning people for whatever, as a punishment for whatever, that we wouldn't do today. And I often wonder, gee, I wonder if it was hard to change that back then. Isn't modernizing to keep up with society something that goes with your church and every church?
Well, I think there's a danger of looking to modernize to keep up with society. We look at American society today, and there are things that the Catholic Church simply cannot modernize, because, again, they go against fundamental church teachings. As I said, the sanctity of preborn human life, the natural law understanding of marriage, those kinds of things. But what the church can do, and Pope John Paul really tried to take a lead with this in saying that the church can change how it presents its teachings and its message to help it to be more accessible to people in modern times. And John Paul did that in how he taught church teaching on human sexuality. His whole theology of the body was to emphasize how very positive is the church's teaching, even while holding to the fact that there are certain moral teachings that underpin that. So again, the church cannot or will not change its fundamental doctrine and moral teachings, but it can change and update the way it presents them to try to help a changing society see and better understand what the church teaches and why.
Rick, I want to follow up with this, but I think you're so right about this, that far from trying to keep up with the Joneses, we see the Holy Father actually exercising leadership. And it seems to me the story here is he's exercised leadership to the left and the right in the name of this year of mercy, reaching out to the followers of the Society of St. Pius X. That it seems to me the really interesting thing about Pope Francis is that he confounds both the left and the right, who would create the Pope in their image, and instead says, here's what I think teaching can be that would widen that tent of mercy for all people in the church.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's exactly right, that people will project what they want onto what the Pope says. And you're absolutely right. Reaching out to the Pius X Society at the same time that he was reaching out to not just women who have had abortions, but those involved in procuring abortions. He was basically refusing to be stereotyped or pigeonholed as a, quote, liberal or, quote, conservative.
I'm so sorry, we're out of time, unfortunately. We could go all night with this, certainly, so we appreciate you joining us. Rick Hinshaw.
Great to be with you.
Director of Communications for the Catholic League. Thank you. What do you think about the latest reform from the Pope? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Up next, we have the latest on Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Stick around.
With respect to personal services that he provided to me and my family, we obviously paid for those services and did so because during a period of time we continued to need his technical assistance, and I think that's in the public record.
That, of course, was Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton speaking at a campaign stop in New Hampshire over the weekend about Clinton family IT specialist Brian Pagliano. That same morning, campaign spokesman Nick Merrill took to Twitter with the following statement. Brian was hired by the Clinton family as a consultant in order to help out periodically with the management of the system in Chappaqua, that hosted the family's emails. Now, while many believe that Mrs. Clinton has been guilty of changing her story throughout this email scandal, she has continuously maintained that she did not knowingly send nor receive any classified material through her personal email account. Mrs. Clinton has also stated confidently that the ongoing investigation would prove this to be the case. However, a report out yesterday from the New York Times states that both the Central Intelligence Agency and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency have determined that 2 emails received on then Secretary Clinton's private server, one in 2009 and one in 2011, were in fact top secret communications. Now, should the New York Times piece turn out to be accurate, and there were at least 2 highly classified emails on her server, Heather Hansen, what is the next step for the Clinton campaign?
What are they going to do, or what should they do? I think that she will just continue to ignore it and pretend it's not an issue and say that it's not an issue, and I don't think that's what she should be doing. I think she should give somebody an interview better than what she gave Andrea Mitchell and actually sit down and answer some of these questions and explain why she did what she did, because I think there's a lot of people who just don't care, but they want to hear from her mouth what exactly happened.
Well, Brad, the latest polls that I saw today show that her support is now softening among Democrats. And you know what? We're laughing about that, but last week it was as high as 80% still among Democrats. Correct. But now it's actually starting to soften, and a lot of that softening has to do with the perception that Joe Biden might come in.
I think that's a piece of it. Let's be clear. She gave that talk in New Hampshire, where Bernie Sanders is now ahead of her in the polls. I mean, it's falling apart around her for these reasons. And I know she'll try and split the difference. Top secret isn't the same as classified. When I said classified, it wasn't top secret. I've got Kirby from the State Department saying, you know, different organizations classify things in different ways. All of it's true, and none of it matters. She has made a career of making distinctions without a difference, and I think the voting public is tired of it.
Joe, what do you think about this? I mean, basically, we know that most Democrats, and that's who we think about right now because we're going into primaries, don't really want to focus on this email thing. Most of them. Can she get past this? Can she still win the primary season?
They don't want to focus on it because they see her as a vessel to power. Right. They don't support Hillary Clinton. They support her because she has the best chance of winning. For now, all that said, I want this question asked. Do you think that your server was hacked? So we can hear this answer. By what? Like a machete? You know, it's the same thing as the claw thing.
You know, I would normally give you a hard time about that, but given her answer to the cleaning,
was it wiped?
I'm going to leave you alone.
That was her
that.
worst moment.
I'm
Absolutely.
Leave, yeah, that was
just,
bad.
come on, you know what it means.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, meanwhile, a spokesman for the State Department claims that the 2 emails in question were circulated on the unclassified system and as such were not marked as classified at the time Mrs. Clinton would have received them. This suggests that they were classified after the fact. Again, will this take her off the hook? I'm going to ask all of you because this has come up frequently, whether or not it was classified at the time, and then some are going to say even if it wasn't stamped, she still knew what was in the materials.
I think legally it makes a huge difference because it's whether she knowingly was exchanging emails that were classified. And I think she has a strong argument legally that she didn't knowingly do so. But for her election, for the public, she needs to be more trustworthy. She needs to come out and speak to the issues. She needs to not talk about wiping it down with a rag, but rather really address the issues.
See, Brad, I think Heather's got that exactly right. And the reason I say that, I don't think she'd be off the hook if something were clearly classified data, even though it wasn't marked. But we do know that this game goes on between agencies, where some say the State Department says this shouldn't be classified, somebody else says it does, so it's pretty hard to hold her to a criminal standard.
Correct, I think that's right. But electorally, I think this is the stuff that really could take her down, and I think whether it's not legally the case, I think this is the stuff indictments are made of, and I think the bottom line is whether there's a conviction or not, if she gets indicted, I don't imagine this campaign going forward.
Well, but are indictments made of this? If Heather's right, then no, there shouldn't be.
To quote the old adage, you can indict a ham sandwich.
You can, but given the administration, it's unlikely.
If you're the least popular ham sandwich, you can.
New York Times report. word.
New York Times report says that now her aides are saying that she's going to be more humorous, more humble.
Yes, this
it
is
is
the
so
relaunch.
ridiculous that they have to declare what she's going to be like this week in terms of personality.
Problematic. Okay, let me ask you, can Hillary Clinton ever recover from this latest revelation about her email server? Let us know at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up next, we're going to read some of the comments you've already given us. Stay with us.
And welcome back to The Wrap. Let's read some of your viewer comments. First up, we have some comments on, you'll never guess who, not Donald Trump, Kim Davis. Here's one from Will who says, to those who say, well, there are other countries where same-sex couples could not get married or could get married, why not go to one of those countries instead of complaining about Kim Davis? I must ask, would you have told the same thing to African Americans, that they could drink from their own fountain, that they could live in their own area, they could use their own bathroom? You have the right to practice and advocate for your religion all day long, but when it comes to imposing your beliefs on another person is when it stops being religious freedom. You have a puzzled look on your face.
Yeah, I was having a really hard time figuring out where they were going. I think I understand, and I think I probably agree with them.
I think so too. Go on.
Here's one from Levon who says, Kim Davis has been jailed without breaking any law. Incorrect. The Supreme Court does not have the authority to make or pass a law. The fact that it violates the state's rights of at least 37 states that ban same-sex marriage by overturning the laws does not mean that the Supreme Court has the authority to force those states to allow same-sex marriage. I'll leave aside what the Supreme Court has the authority to do and not do, but just so you're clear, she went to jail because she was in contempt of the court's order. That is absolutely a staple under our system. He could have done other things if he chose to, but he did choose to put her in jail, and that is a judge's prerogative.
Okay, and John says, and he agrees with Rick Unger, I think Mike Huckabee is correct. You had lawyers not elected pushing an agenda to make law. It's opposite day, by the way.
Yeah, but it's opposite. I would say that you need to take that up with the founders who created that system. David says, it is my understanding that SCOTUS only ruled Section 3 of DOMA to be unconstitutional. They did not rule against the DOMA definition of marriage to be one man and one woman. Congress has made no law making same-sex a federal right and has left the issue to the states. So I am wondering by what legal authority the judge has sent Mrs. Davis to jail. Am I missing something here? Yes, you are. The Supreme Court has the right to interpret the Constitution. Congress cannot pass a law that's unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has said that barring same-sex marriage is unconstitutional.
Okay, and we have a comment from Mark about Rick saying that the Bible says you must follow the law. Quote, having Rick quote the Bible is like having Al Capone comment on tax law. Capone went to jail for that, by the way. I saw The Untouchables. Just go to the book of Daniel and read about Daniel being put into the fiery furnace for civil disobedience. I can give many other examples, such as Jesus. Top that, Unger.
I'll just say this. You give me too much credit. Al Capone knew tax law far better than I know the Bible.
I guess. All right, you're up next.
Oh,
You really
aren't I? Okay, here's a comment from Joe about Donald Trump. Knew he'd get in here. Regarding Donald Trump's wall, if you put your mind to it, there's nothing that can't be done, especially in this our free country. A lot of Southern Republicans are disagreeing with you. You might want to take a look at that. They say you can't, in fact, build a wall coast to coast.
Really?
Yeah.
It's 1,900 miles long, I believe, the Trump wall.
They're saying it's not doable, and these are Republicans.
Great Wall of China's pretty long. I
Yes,
never
it
looked
is.
it up. And they built that, what, like 500,000? I don't even know when they built it, but it was a long time ago.
I'm just citing these Republicans down there, so, you know, what do I know about wall building?
He's a builder.
He's a builder.
Okay, Hans, I wanted to get your opinion on this because I don't think we talked about this.
On the wall?
On the wall. In other words, if you were to build it, it is akin to building a wall
Will
from
they
Key
come?
West to Maine. That's a long wall.
Right.
So is it impractical?
I think it's impractical. I think that Jeb Bush's idea that you need to have a lot of technical ways to do it, using technology, using other ways to have a virtual wall perhaps, but a true wall I think is probably impractical.
Hirschfield?
Completely impractical. Nothing's impossible. The question is it wise? Is it actually the best way to secure the border? And when you ask most people under calm circumstances, is that the best technology we have? An early medieval version of the Great Wall of China? The answer is clearly no.
Yeah, that's a good
that
point.
doesn't mean border security is unimportant, but let's not pander to the insecurity by building a wall that we don't need. Let's build the safeguards we do.
Would the Chinese build the wall the same way if they were building it today?
Of course not.
Probably not.
Right.
Good point, Brad.
I think it's symbolism, though, right, with Trump, that, look, we need to strengthen it, we're going to build
He
a
just
wall.
likes to build.
No, people are frustrated.
If he gets the financing.
Yeah.
Frustrated and scared. You know, they're seeing a lot of things happen in this country, and they're frustrated and scared. And a wall sounds good because it keeps the bad people out. And
Except that it doesn't.
But that's the idea behind it.
This was the summer of Trump. Quickly, lightning round. Do you think this will be the fall of Trump as well, or has he peaked? And we've said this about 1,000 times that he has. So be careful.
He's getting more and more serious in his answers, and I would not consider him done by a long shot.
Better candidate now?
Definitely a better candidate, but I don't know that he hasn't peaked anyway.
Okay.
Getting better, still saying a lot of silly things and getting into unnecessarily silly fights.
Who ultimately catches him or beats him?
I don't know. I mean, he may. I am taking it very seriously now as the possible Republican nominee.
Amazing.
And as a Democrat, I'm okay with that.
I'm sure you are. Wow. Trump-Sanders, wouldn't that be interesting? Or Trump-Biden, for that matter. Anyway, remember, if you want to weigh in any of these issues we talk about here in the show, be sure to go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know what you think. And be sure to get your copy of Ben Carson's book, One Nation, absolutely free. All you have to do is pay $4.95 to cover the cost of shipping. That's 1-800-655-7567, 1-800-655-7567, or visit newsmax.com/Ben right now. Ben is second in the polls, by the way, we should note, except in New Hampshire, where John Kasich is. Anyway, next up, it's time for Yay or Nay. It's happy time. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, radio talk show host Laura Ingraham asked GOP presidential candidate Rand Paul if speaking Spanish on the campaign trail, as Jeb Bush does, is appropriate. Mr. Paul then went off on some strange tangent talking about assimilation, even referencing Native Americans as an example of what can happen when a group refuses to assimilate. The Kentucky senator said that if Native Americans assimilated to our way of life, they would have been doing as well as the rest of us within a decade, but instead they isolated themselves. Sure, voluntarily, of course. Yeah. If you are running for president, should you at least have a basic understanding of American history, Rick Unger?
That is terrifying. That is unbelievable.
He's a smart guy, too. That's not, I don't expect that out of him.
All evidence to the contrary.
I guess.
But to answer the question about Jeb Bush, I think it's fine that he speaks Spanish. Listen, I actually support people here who do speak Spanish that they should also know English. I'm all for it, but bilingual is a good thing in the modern world.
Muy mucho.
Yeah, I think that assimilation, there's an argument to be made for assimilation, but the one that Rand Paul made was not the argument to be made.
That would be the understatement of the century.
Yes,
I have a 3-word sentence for Dr. Paul. Reservation. I mean,
wait, that's something my wife does for dinner.
Yeah, I think that's what he thinks they were. It's outrageous. It's embarrassing that he actually did that. I'm actually sympathetic to the fact that sensitivity to multiple cultures should not be an excuse for ignoring the dominant culture or English as the dominant language in this country. But my God, what was he talking about? It's outrageous.
I have 3 words as well. Trail of Tears.
Yeah, that.
Anyway. That's because you're a more sensitive soul.
I am. So anyway, we're flexible on this show. We're nimble. She's got a comment in so good. If we just wanted to read her, hot off the presses, comes from Tom McLaren. Hope I pronounced that correctly. He says Rick is very quick to come down on Kim Davis. My question to Rick is: should the mayors of sanctuary cities go to jail for not following the law? And should President Obama go to jail for granting illegal amnesty to Dreamers and not defending our border? First question.
Let
Stick
me
to the sanctuary.
I'm going to take it so I get it. First point is I'm not coming down on Kim Davis. My problem with Kim Davis is she refused to follow the law and had to respond to a court order. She didn't follow a court order. Here's the distinction.
Would you send her to jail?
No, I probably would have fined her, but that's a judge's prerogative.
Okay, because you were a judge.
Okay, yeah. Now, in terms of mayors of sanctuary cities, if they are violating the federal law, and that has to be determined by a judge, and they continue to do it, you bet I would say send them to jail. That's number one. Should Obama go to jail for granting illegal amnesty to Dreamers? Very, very different. For one thing, no court has interpreted the laws to say that what he's doing is illegal. It appears to be, and I know you might disagree, clearly within his parameters of his authority to do it. If somebody challenges it, if a court says, Mr. President, you can't do that, then you know what? You betcha. He's not allowed to violate the law. And not defending our border. Now, you were asking a really intelligent question until you got to that.
Oh boy.
Because that is That is totally a matter of, I may think he's defending it sufficiently, you may not think he is. You know, you could ask the same of any president. Would you ask if George Bush should have gone to jail for not defending our border? We have more fencing now than we had then. So until you got to that one, you were asking good questions. Those are my answers.
All right, Tom, you will get a free Daily Wrap t-shirt just for... Thank you.
Where are you going to get it?
What's that?
We'll make one up.
Now that you promised it to the man, he's entitled.
That's true. I don't have his address. So.
He earned it.
Anyway, finally, former Alaska governor, her name is Sarah Palin, would like to be Secretary of the Department of Energy in the Trump administration, but only for a little while, as her first order of business would be to get rid of the department altogether. According to Ms. Palin, states should have more control over energy decisions. Is it a good idea to get rid of the Department of Energy, and would you make Palin the head of a department only for her to dismantle it?
Is that a serious question?
No.
No.
Okay, Heather?
The Department of Energy is primarily involved with nuclear energy and our nuclear weapons, and so no, I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of it, nor do I think it's a good idea to have Sarah Palin head it.
Very good.
I would double down on both of those, with the caveat that using it often, as this administration has, as a vehicle for investment in alternative energy, I don't think should be as much on their agenda.
I would add, I have many friends who are comedians who would be very unhappy with our answer.
Yeah,
probably,
it's true.
Probably. That's true. Okay. Well, that's all for tonight. I'm Joe Concha on behalf of Rick Unger and the rest of our all-star panel. Yes, I'm stealing that. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. The Steve Malzberg Show. That's next.